Okay, welcome back to the next part of the video. In the last video, we brought the XR2 from the point where we were, at our closest approach at Venus, all the way around the sun over here to aphelion, or the sun's apoapsis. And along the way, we completed a couple of mid-course corrections. The first one was at the line of nodes, and that was at a cost of 11.6 meters a second, and that brought our closest approach at Earth down from, I think it was around 6 gigameters, all the way down to, I forget what the number was. I want to say it was like 15,000 meters above the surface. And we saw that if we did any additional correction there with plane change, that it would cost us, a small fortune. So we skipped that and then went forward to the point here, where we're at, the sun's apoapsis, aphelion. Our orbital speed is as low as it can be in our orbit around the sun. And doing another correction here at this point at a cost of only 8.241 meters a second, we brought our closest approach at Earth, all the way down the rest of the way. We in fact put it a little bit below the surface. We also found that if we did a mid-course correction after leaving Venus, when Venus got to the point where its gravitational influence was 0.00 and the stage is updated, that if we had done that mid-course correction at that point, it would have cost 53.72 meters a second, which isn't too bad, but we obviously did better by, we did significantly better by doing the burn here and here instead. And it could have been the case that it would have been much more than 53 meters a second. And even if we had done the burn there, I believe we still would have needed the correction there and there as well. So skipping that one and just doing them there and there, I believe, is the best way to go. Now we're ready to push forward to get all the way over to Earth. So let's go ahead and do that.
Rotation.
Get myself rotated, prograde to the sun, and then kill rotate. And the reason I do that, this is something Dimitri pointed out to me. If you are prograde to the sun when you warp time forward, at 10,000 or 100,000, you don't get as much spinning as you do otherwise. And I still have an add-on that actually eliminates all that spinning motion, but I've disabled it just to see if I can get by without using it. Not that there's a problem with it, but I'm just curious if I could just not use it anymore. Okay, so let's go ahead and warp time forward. We've got 100 and some days to go. We're going to be at Earth at 57008, and it's currently 56897, so it's like 110 days or so. So let's go forward 100,000. And I've noticed, I've played around with this before, and as you're getting closer to Earth on these interplanetary journeys, you'll see this approach at Earth kind of wobble in and out. And I believe, undoubtedly, the reason this is happening is because the moon is orbiting the Earth, and there's that tug going on. So that wobble back and forth is the influence of the moon. I believe if you made a custom solar system and took the moon out of the solar system, then this journey from here to here would be much more stable as far as transects is concerned. Now we do need to pay attention that we don't get too close to Earth before we start setting up some kind of correction, because what we don't want to have happen, two things we don't want to have. We don't want to end up close to Earth and have our encounter look like this, because then we have to bring our approach at Earth out a long way, 6,000 kilometers. So before we get too close to Earth, we want to make sure that we don't look like this. But we've got a ways to go, so we don't need to worry about it yet. And the other direction that we don't want is the opposite end. We don't want to end up close to Earth when our minimum altitude here is at its farthest point out. Although actually in this case it would be better to err on this side than it would down here, because the distance out here is much less. We would only have to correct for 900 kilometers instead of, 6,000. So we're 28 days, 29 days out. Let's just go forward a little farther and just see how close we can get in. So the wobble is going farther
Warning,
in.
oxygen low.
Let me reset that warning.
System reset.
Don't let that warning scare you. It's just saying that our oxygen is less than 10%, but we still have 48 days of LOX left, which is quite a bit more than we need. So that's just a percentage warning. Continue warping time forward. Watching the time, we're 20 days out. Yeah, a little more than that actually. So this is going this way. And remember, we don't want to end up at Earth when this is all the way in the middle, because then we've got the largest amount of correction possible. But we're far enough out that we know it's still going to wobble out the other way. So let's just go forward. And now the wobble's going the other direction. And we're 10 days out. Now we're definitely getting to the point where I can't really anticipate where this line's going to end up by the time we're within, a few hours of Earth. So I'm just going to have to kind of guess. We remember that it tops out somewhere around 900 kilometers. So we're far enough out that it should top out and start going back the other way. Actually, I guess it's going to top out a little higher than that. Now it's going back the other way. And we've got about 1 day to go. So we'll just go ahead and continue warping time forward. But we don't want to get too close before we do a correction if needed. Let's go forward a little farther. All right, let me check the time. We're at 57007.5, so we're 24 hours away, not quite 24 hours away. And the minimum altitude is going down as we're going forward, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to get all the way down to, 70 kilometers or so, which is what we ideally want. So I think what we need to do, I think we'd be better off, yeah, we're only a half day away. So let's go ahead now and bring up Orbit MFD and let's reference Earth. And let's copy that information over to the HUD.
Translation. Rotation.
Let's rotate prograde to the Earth so we can see our destination. And we can set up a maneuver if we want to track the cost, or we can just kind of do a bit of an inward push. But let's, out of curiosity, let's set up a maneuver to track the cost. It'll be negative outward. Let me double check this. So we're saying that negative outward, and we're just going to bring it down to say that number roughly, but that's a bit more than I would expect it to cost. So let's reset that and let's see if prograde is better at this point, because we're still a little ways out. The Earth isn't the strongest gravitational influence yet, so we may actually be better off with just a bit of negative prograde. No, definitely not. Okay, so outward it is. But we do want to remember that this number is coming down as we get in closer to the Earth, so we don't want to bring it all the way down just yet. In fact, we probably should have done this a little sooner, but you can't really know for sure when you need to do it. Let's make this a nice even number. 15 meters a second. We won't worry about where the minimum altitude is just yet. So there we are, 15 meters a second. Let's make a note of that. So 15 even. That's our Venus to Earth. I believe that would be number 3 because we had the line of nodes, APA burn, and this is just going to be number 3.
Translation. Rotation.
And for a negative outward, that's obviously going to be facing negative 90. So even without bringing up view target, we know which direction we need to face.
Translation.
We'll use a little bit of main engine for the bulk of the Delta V. It's just one tick of main engine just to bring it down more quickly than using just translation alone.
Rotation. Translation.
And we'll get the rest of this with translation. Okay, so that was 15 meters a second, not bad. View over to maneuver mode off.
Rotation.
And we should be able to take care of any additional corrections that we need with just a little bit of translation one way or the other. Let's bring back up orbit MFD so we can track, how close we're getting. And our PE velocity is going to be 13.94. One thing we could do, since we have the extra fuel and we're not going to use it, we could go retrograde to the Earth and just burn off all the remaining fuel that we have. It would slow us down a little bit. It wouldn't be anything significant, so I'm not going to do it. But that's something that we could do if we wanted to do something with the remaining fuel that we've got. But we can survive atmospheric braking at that speed. It's kind of getting toward the upper end of what's survivable. But I remember when I did the Mars, Venus, Earth trip, my PE velocity was higher than that, and I was able to survive. But preferably, when you do these slings, you really want to make sure that when you get back to Earth, your PE velocity is closer to what it would be when you come back from the moon, which is closer to 11 kilometers per second. That would be better. And there is a way to do that on this trip. And I'm thinking that I'm going to do another Venus sling, and I'm going to show how to arrive back at Earth with a much lower PE velocity. It's quite a bit more complicated, which is why I didn't want to do it for this flight.
Translation. Rotation.
But it is possible. Something Dimitri showed me. Okay, so that number is not coming down very quickly, so let's...
Translation. Rotation.
Let's rotate prograde. And then we're just going to do a little bit of inward translation. We're not going to bother setting up a maneuver, just to bring the minimum altitude down. And that's coming down a little too slow, so let's go ahead and face negative 90 and use a little bit of main engine to bring it down. And what we're looking for is an altitude around 70 kilometers. And you can see as I'm getting closer to the Earth, my PE velocity is going up. We're going to leave it there because we are, this number is coming down a little bit as we move forward. Although, yeah, it's good enough.
Translation. Rotation.
Any additional correction can be done now with translation for sure.
Translation.
Go with that. And let's go forward until we're at 0.8. It's just a good number, in my opinion, about right there.
Rotation.
Okay, so what I want to do here is quick save, and there's two reasons for it. This will make for a pretty good break in the video, although it's only been 16 minutes. It's a little shorter than usual, but go ahead and break here anyway. And we've got a quick save set up, and the main reason I want a quick save at this point is because it gives me a fail-safe point, to be honest. If I mess up the approach there to Earth, then I can come back to this point, which is really close in, and then do it over. That's the main reason that I want to save here. So if you have any questions about this part of the video, go ahead and leave those questions down below. Hopefully you understood the idea from coming from, you know, aphelion over to Earth, how the wobble, the moon, you know, rotating around the Earth is causing that wobble effect that you could see there in TransX. And that's because the, you know, TransX doesn't model all the different bodies. It's just two bodies. Okay, so I think that's going to be it for this part, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, welcome back to the next part of the video. In the last video, we brought the XR2 from the point where we were, you know, at our closest approach at Venus, all the way around the sun over here to aphelion, or, you know, the sun's apoapsis. And along the way, we completed a couple of mid-course corrections. The first one was at the line of nodes, and that was at a cost of 11.6 meters a second, and that brought our closest approach at Earth down from, I think it was around 6 gigameters, all the way down to, I forget what the number was. I want to say it was like 15,000 meters above the surface. And we saw that if we did any additional correction there with plane change, that it would cost us, you know, a small fortune. So we skipped that. It would have been much more than 53 meters a second. And even if we had done the burn there, I believe we still would have needed the correction there and there as well. So skipping that one and just doing them there and there, I believe, is the best way to go. Now we're ready to push forward to get all the way over to Earth. So let's go ahead and do that.
Rotation.
Get myself rotated, prograde to the sun, and then kill rotate. And the reason I do that, we also found that if we did a mid-course correction after leaving Venus, you know, when Venus got to the point where its gravitational influence was 0.00, and the stage is updated, that if we had done that mid-course correction at that point, it would have cost 53.72 meters a second, which isn't too bad, but we obviously did better by, you know, we did significantly better by doing the burn here and here instead. And it could have been the case that it, and then went forward to the point here, you know, where we're at, you know, the sun's apoapsis, you know, aphelion. Our orbital speed is as low as it can be in our orbit around the sun. And doing another correction here at this point at a cost of only 8.241 meters a second, we brought our closest approach at Earth, you know, all the way down the rest of the way. We in fact put it a little bit below the surface.